Hello, my name is Katie Yost.
And I'm Anthony Barnes.
And this is our mental health podcast. So we're just going to be doing some quick intros. Again, my name's Katie. I just actually graduated from Whitworth University with my bachelor's in psychology. And since this is a mental health / psychology podcast, we wanted to go over what our favorite psychology theorist was. So I would say mine is Karen Horney because, one, she's a kick-ass feminist, so we love that. And also, she just really went against the wave of like neo-Freudians and what Sigmund Freud was talking about during the 1900s. And she just like made all of these counterpoints and basically just told them like, you suck and women are also great. So love her, all of her great little tidbits. How about you, Anthony?
Okay, so yeah, I'm Anthony. I'm a Whitworth senior. I'm studying psychology and foreign languages. I think that's a good intro. Favorite theorist? I'd have to say Jung because that man was hippy-dippy, very humanistic, very much like if you support someone unconditionally, they'll just grow naturally. I strongly believe in that. I would say that guy.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, he's a classic, both classic. I think what we want to hop into first is talking about ADHD. So today happens to be May 31st, which is the last day of Mental Health Awareness Month. Of course, mental health awareness every day of the year, but especially May, it's very special and close to my heart. As someone who has been diagnosed with ADHD for most of their life, I'll kind of get into just my quick journey, and then Anthony, if you want to share about yours as well.
Yeah, and Katie and I have very different experiences with ADHD, our diagnoses, and just the journey that we've had with it. So I'll let Katie go first, and then I'll talk a little.
Perfect. So for those of you who don't know, ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, and just a basic breakdown is it's someone who has trouble focusing on certain tasks for a certain amount of time, or maybe completing the task. Like I literally will set my phone down and forget where it is like 2 minutes later.
So often.
Yeah, like I cannot find it to retrace my steps. So for me, it definitely affects like my object permanence. Like I forget where things are a lot. Also, if something's not interesting enough, I just lose focus in it really easily.
Yes. That's why I have like a million hobbies.
Yeah, exactly. I like start cooking and then I'm like, I'm going to try crocheting.
Yeah.
And then it's like
definitely
all these forgotten hobbies. I can make a whole podcast just on that. So yeah, basically someone just who struggles with attention, and I'm not necessarily super hyperactive like physically, but my thoughts are very hyperactive. So I'll go from one thought to another in just milliseconds. And do you ever have the thing where like you're walking and someone's talking about something and then you bring a completely separate topic, but it's because you made all the connections in your mind.
And they say, how do you get there?
Yeah, they're like, that's so random. And you're like, no, like I had all these things, but they don't ever see that.
Okay, this is something you guys have to know. When Katie and I get together, the conversations we have to an outsider might seem so random, so bizarre. And then in our minds, we're just following each other's footsteps. We're like, yeah, this makes total sense.
It's just like boom, 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 boom. Yeah, it's like fireworks. So yeah, I guess to start out with, I was diagnosed. So currently I'm 22. And I was diagnosed when I was 9 years old. I was in 4th grade. And my dad also has ADHD, and so does my brother, but my mom doesn't. And so it was really sweet. I guess I would say a lot of parents of kids with learning disabilities don't do this. So I was really lucky, but she catered my environment to like help me thrive the best that I could.
Oh, wow.
And so like she helped me, instead of putting me in therapy, she like did her own research and did behavioral therapy at home. And so she would just like constantly like I absolutely hated change as a kid. And like with ADHD, that's a big thing. And so she would change up my room every single day I went to school. And I'd come back and it was completely different. It would drive me insane. But she was like, you have to get used to like things changing. Like, because I would forget where things were. And she was like, you have to learn how to retrace your steps and do that. And so good. So as a 10-year-old, of course, I like threw a fit. But I appreciate that so much. So she was really supportive. I was actually put on medication honestly, as soon as I was diagnosed. I don't remember the diagnostic process too much, but I remember being on medication immediately. So I didn't really have a choice in that, which there's pros and cons of that, I would say. But the longer you're on medication, the easier it is for your brain to reroute itself to like, because that's what the medication does. It like reroutes your neural pathways to, be better at focusing and to like have more discipline. So I guess over the years, I definitely learned a lot on how to like discipline myself. Like, at least, I don't know if it's like this for you, but like when I like I can't procrastinate because I know if I start, it'll just like
snowball.
Yeah, it'll just snowball.
Yeah.
And so I allow a certain amount of procrastination, but otherwise I'll just be like overwhelmed. So yeah, it can be a lot. So yeah, I would say that I knew I was always different, and I think like the struggles in the classroom was where it was the most prominent. Like I'm sure you saw like a lot of your signs in school.
I had a lot of what they looked at as like behavioral issues.
Yeah.
So like blurting stuff out or just fidgeting a lot, moving a lot, tapping on my desk a lot of times, looking around all the time.
Yeah.
Like I needed to be stimulated more than I was just having sitting there and having the teacher talking. And so a lot of the times they would see that as like just not following,
not paying attention.
Directions.
Yeah. No, it was the same. I would blurt stuff out constantly. Like, it's just like if the teacher is like, do you know the answer? I'd be like, yeah. And I just like say it. And I was like, why not?
It's like I had the urge to blurt it out all the time.
I was like, and like I see in college now, like people don't really raise their hands. They just talk.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, this wouldn't have really been a problem. But, like I get where they're coming from. I am still currently medicated. I guess actually I just stopped now that I'm not in school anymore.
What's that been like? How long have you not, when did you start that?
Yeah, so it started, I guess I could say every single summer that I wasn't in school, I wasn't on medication. My parents didn't want to put me on that because I really only needed it in a school setting, just like with the discipline, the, blurting out answers. Like in regular social settings, I learned what I'll definitely use in the future call masking. And it's basically what someone with a learning disability does to like hide their learning disability, basically. So like I've learned to like not blurt stuff out and interrupt people as much, but it's also incredibly exhausting.
It is very exhausting.
Yeah. It's like the superheroes. It's like being Spider-Man. Like you gotta like pretend to be normal, and it's like,
I gotta be Peter Parker once in a while.
It's like fly around. So I'm pretty used to it. But last year I actually took a gap year, and that was the first time I was off my medication since like for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
And that's when like all of like everything I've repressed about my ADHD, like the worries, the doubts, the like low self-esteem, I kind of pushed it all down because my medication masked everything. It made me feel like I was, in the sense quotation marks, normal as like as someone who's not neurodivergent, a neurotypical person. So I realized that I was not a neurotypical person. I definitely still had ADHD, and all the symptoms came out because I'd been on medication for so long that I didn't learn how to mask all them completely.
Wow. So with mine, it was like, so just a little bit of background. I was diagnosed at the age of 21, so very different than Katie's. Yeah, I'll just say a little bit. And at the time I was taking all these psych classes, and I was getting curious, like, a lot of this is like hitting the mark on what I experience. I should figure something out about this. But part of me, having not been diagnosed at a young age and having like already been masking so much, I was already really doubtful because like people gaslighted me at a young age, like, oh, you're misbehaving, or, oh, you just have too much energy, or something like that. Or you're just boys will be boys. That kind of, oh my God.
Yeah.
That's a whole different thing.
That's a whole other podcast.
But anyway, having all that, I was like, do I actually have this? I'm not entirely sure. And then when I started journeying into like medications, the first one I went on, it changed everything so much after like the first day.
It's a light bulb.
Yeah, I was just, my thoughts were like a lot more chill. I could just sit there and just look at something. And at the same time, I had these questions of like, am I like repressing parts of me? Am I just trying to fit in? And I feel like it's a little bit of a mix of both. And I'm still at the stage I'm at trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
which is a lot. Like, how has that journey been? Like, because you were diagnosed recently, like a few years ago?
Not even. It was like a little over a year ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was recently thinking like, what if I just didn't take it for a little while and just like see what happens?
Did you try it?
I haven't actually tried it yet because part of me feels like socially, I'm going to feel anxious more than I already am.
Do you not feel anxious when you're not?
Oh, yeah. Another thing. I was diagnosed with social anxiety.
Right.
So that's a whole other thing too. And depression. So a lot of those things work together, especially those of you who know a little bit more about ADHD. There's a lot of comorbidity with anxiety and depression.
Especially those.
Surprise, surprise. With all of the things going on.
It's just a whole recipe.
Yeah. So part of me feels like I'm going to be like the annoying one or something when I'm around other people and I'm very like energetic and I just have to be loud and like not filtering very, very well because I'm not masking without the medication. So part of it sounds really exhausting. And at the same time, taking the medication, I almost feel like I'm blunted a little. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like a flattened affect.
Yeah, it's like a give and take. And part of me is, it's like when I wake up, I have those thoughts a lot. And I'm like, but by the time I take the medication, I'm like, well, I took the medication already. So, and then it kicks in and I'm just sitting there like, okay, I guess I'll just do stuff now. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's so many times when like, I want to be excited, but I'm just like, yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
And then they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. And it's like you know you're dull, but also it comes in waves. So like sometimes you're completely fine.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm like my regular self, like energetically, and I'm just like very expressive with my emotions and they're very loud and just how I normally am. And some days it's the medication be hitting different. I don't know.
No, I get that.
Yeah. It's like,
it makes me more anxious, but that's also just like, do you ever get like, so if I haven't taken it in a while or like, usually when I first start to go back to school, like I will feel, and I don't have anxiety. So I've like never experienced like a full like panic attack or anything, but like I will feel what I assume is anxiety and like, oh, I feel gross. I'm just like, I don't like this. And then I take it enough times that I feel okay. So it's like
getting back
transitionary period.
So for me, I also have a different medication that rhymes with Boloft that that helps with depression and social anxiety. And so them put together, it's like I definitely do not experience as much anxiety as I did before.
That makes sense, yeah.
Considering like 2 years ago, if I raised my hand in class or something like that, I was so stressed and sweating.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was bad. So the medications helped me a lot in that regard. But then on the flip side, especially the medication for helping with ADHD, that one's kind of made me feel like I'm not fully getting out everything I'm wanting to get out when I'm like talking in a classroom setting. Like I'll say stuff and then a couple minutes later I'm like, well, now I'm thinking of this, but without the medication I would have thought about all of that instantly.
Yeah, no, I'd say the medication makes me more calm. Like sometimes like I almost crave that. Like if I want to go have fun with friends, I do not take my medication because I know I will like not be like, for me without my medication, I feel a lot more free. So like that's why I encourage you like,
oh, interesting.
Try it this summer.
I think what I was worried about is like I guess you talking about this now helps a lot, but I wasn't really told by like a pharmacist or anybody what the side effects would be if like I didn't take it for a prolonged period of time and then went back on it. Like if that was something that's okay to do.
Yeah.
So that's why I've also been on it the whole time. And then I also have to be careful, like mixed, like if you have drinks at night or something, you have to make sure that you didn't take your medication too soon. Exactly. Yeah. I have extended release now. So I really have to be careful, especially because of that and the other medication. It's just not a good match. So.
Right. And extended release, by the way, is like, so it's like a 12-hour acting. At least that's what mine is.
Yeah. It's an extended duration of the same medication that you would get normally, but you don't have to take multiple.
Yeah. Instead of every 4 hours, you just take it once in the morning and then it'll literally work for 12 hours. So do not take it past like 10 a.m. because.
No, you'll be wired.
You'll be wild. Oh my god.
One time I took it at like 12:30 because I ran back home for lunch and took it. And I was up so late just sitting there like, this sucks.
Because then it's like, you're too tired, but like your brain is just like.
Won't go to bed. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's also, I just thought of this. I mean, of course, completely random, but how Anthony and I met, which it reminded me when you said that you get scared to talk in class.
Yeah.
So I was Anthony's TA for a psychology class like 2 years ago now. And he sat at my table and then we have another friend who she'll be hopefully on this podcast in the future, but
oh yeah, she would be.
Yes, 100%. But we were both his TA, and so then we just like started hanging out and lots of wine nights and
a lot of charcuterie boards.
Oh, so
book
many.
Club.
Vegan mousse.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I love vegan mousse. You got me on that. But anyways, yeah. So back to the medication. I definitely suggest, like, talking to your doctor and see, like, but, like, for the summer, like, I don't think it wouldn't hurt anything.
Yeah, that's what, we're not saying anything about your guys' medication. You talk to your medical professionals about that. Yes. We're just having personal experience conversations.
Yes, exactly. Which is why I still suggest that Anthony talks to his doctor. But yeah, like, in my experience, like, I would love when the summers would come because I felt like I could be my free self. Like, I didn't feel annoying. Like, it was, like, so pent up that it was just, like, I could feel like I was having fun again.
That's something I've been wondering. Like, when I'm not having to sit down and deliberately do a bunch of tasks like homework or things like that, it's a very different conversation you're having when it comes to medication, because I think without it, I'd be totally fine, because the type of life I live is one that's like, I like spontaneity. I like a bunch of different things happening. And for my brain, without the medication, that just works for me. Like, when crap hits the fan, that's kind of where I do the best. I shine brightest because everyone else is freaking out, but my brain's running so fast that this is enough stimulation for me to, like, focus. Yeah, it's like, Dr. Baird mentioned that once, like, when shit hits the fan, that's when you literally, like, thrive. Yeah. And, like, I think of, I'm a barista, and when we get rushes at the coffee shop, like, everyone is freaking out, and I'm literally just sitting there and being like, this is great. Like, I was like, there's so much to do. I don't have to worry about being understimulated. Like, I'm just like, I will don't even get me started on multitasking. Oh my gosh, I can multitask the crap out of things. But, like, it's so nice because, like, you literally, like, people with ADHD are meant to thrive in those stressful situations. Yes. That's also why I love, like, for example, my birthday party a couple months ago. I loved being the host of it and just, like, walking around and being like, hey, are you guys having a good time? Do you need anything? That was so great because it kept me moving, it kept me thinking, and I enjoyed it. That was fun for me.
Do you ever like planning events? I mean, like, your birthday party, but, like,
planning events, okay, it depends on how I'm planning it. Like, if I'm sitting down with a piece of paper, it's sometimes not as fun, but the thoughts of thinking about it is nice.
Like, decorating.
Like, pacing around and, like, writing on my notes app or something. I like that a lot. Also, in the summertime, I work with a lot of kids, and they're so sporadic and energetic that it just helps me focus a lot because it's just stimulating enough for me. Yeah.
Oh, working with kids. I used to be a camp counselor. Let me tell you, that's the best job for someone with ADHD. Because, gosh, what is the weirdest, this is, like, not even on topic, but what is the weirdest question a kid has asked you? Or, like, said to you? There's so many.
I actually don't know.
I have one.
What is it?
Can I share? Okay. I worked with 4th and 5th graders one summer, and this kid, I swear, he knew more than half the people at the university I was at. Like, so he, like, came up to me. I was 19, and he was like, so do you know how the Electoral College works? And I was like, no.
Wow.
Like, I was like, kind of. And then he literally broke it down for me and explained it to me. And I'm like, you are 10. And you were explaining how our U.S. voting system works. Like, that is just, that was wild.
Wow. I think something I wanted to ask you about in terms of ADHD was your hobbies, because we talked about it for a second. What? Just what? What are your hobbies? Like, you know what I mean? Do you have, like, seasons for them?
Oh, yeah, totally. So I would say I've always loved photography, and high school, and, like, probably mostly high school. It was, like, hyperfocus, you know?
Oh, you should tell them.
Yeah. So hyperfocus is when someone with ADHD, like, they get stuck on, like, either it could be, like, a meal, it could be a type of task, it could be yes, I have a hyperfocus meal for sure. Yeah. It could be just, like, any activity, like, even going and getting the mail during COVID, that was my hyperfocus. I would, like, every single day, I was like, I'm gonna go get the mail because there's nothing else to do. So it oftentimes has to do with hobbies. So, like, someone with ADHD, maybe they, like, really like crocheting for, like, a month. And then they go on and they're like, oh, I want to go and learn how to play the piano. And then they'll go and do that for a month. And then sometimes these hobbies will come back, but then sometimes they don't. And
sometimes they just float into the ethereal. Like, for me, season-wise, when it comes to, like, wintertime, I bust out all the yarn because I just sit there and watch a show and make gifts. Yeah. That's great. Piano's been a consistent one. Photography I've been getting into a lot. Yoga. One that I had for, like, a split second was sewing. And I still have all the stuff for it. That's something else. People with ADHD will like be so hyper-focused on and excited that they'll go get whatever they need to make the projects. You know, and like sometimes it costs a good penny. It costs a pretty penny sometimes. And then you just put it away after a month and you like never touch it for the longest time.
Or you'll make it in one night. Like,
oh yeah, you'll just get it done.
My secret skill that I forget to tell people about is I can make a tie quilt, like a fleece tie quilt, in 2 hours.
Holy crap.
Like I can go buy the materials, cut it, and then tie it, and then I like wrap it up for a present. And my mom's like, you just sat there and did that for 2 hours. And I'm like,
oh, you know, this actually makes a lot of sense because in middle school, we did a Secret Santa with some friends. And I sat there for the whole day, the entire day, from morning until nighttime, like way too late to be up. And I crocheted this whole market bag, a Doctor Who themed market bag for my friend, and like sewed a lining for it and everything.
Oh my gosh.
Not once did I stop. I'm pretty sure like I would only eat when I got a really bad headache or something like that.
Oh my
That's another thing. When we're hyper-focusing, sometimes we'll forget about, like, if we have to go to the bathroom, if we have to eat, what time it is sometimes, depending on where we're at.
Yeah, no, it gets rough. I'd say my most memorable hyper-focus activity was I learned how to play the harp in like a month. And I was like 18, and my piano teacher, like, she was amazing. She had like, she could play like 10 different instruments, but she had, it's called a lyre. It's basically a mini harp. And she had one, and she just let me borrow it, and then she never asked for it back, so I still have it.
Wow.
I still have it. But yeah, I like learned how to play it, and bro, I have not touched that in like a year or two, but I was really into it for a while. Yeah, no, I'd say, I could go back to your original question though. I think dancing is definitely like my main hobby. Like,
that's so funny. I forgot my original question.
No, you're good. You asked what my hobbies were.
Yeah, working memory. What did I say?
Yeah, working memory. Out the window. I love dancing. I'll probably bring that up in future podcasts. I used to be a dance teacher at the school that we go to, and absolutely loved it. I would teach musical theater. I work with kids as well, so I love working with kids. I love cooking. That's been my newfound, definitely my new hyper focus in the past few months.
Yeah.
We'll see how long it lasts. Hopefully a while. I really like that one. So, okay, kind of as like a little closing out, we definitely want to do another podcast on this, but we want to talk about a book that Anthony and I both really enjoyed. It's called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk?
Yep.
Is this? Yeah. It's amazing. It's about trauma, physical trauma, psychological, emotional. It's absolutely amazing. He really breaks it down. Like, there's a whole like neuroscience side of it, but then there's also more of like, you know, in layman's terms. Like,
he brings like the humanity into it too. He shows how neuroscience, psychology, and the humanities can all be tied together, and how just like we can viscerally experience trauma way after it's already happened. It can just feel like we're being thrown back into it. And what does that look like? Sure, neurologically, but also what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? And how can you really interact with another human to help them, I guess, alleviate all of that trauma that they've built up over time? And it's a wonderful book. Highly recommend it.
Yes. And even if like, I think to go along with that, like even if your mind forgets the trauma or has repressed it, or you think you've worked past it, like your body still keeps the score of that trauma. And that's what I really like about the book is like, you don't realize how much your body holds. Like even in a certain situation that makes you uncomfortable, like you start sweating and like shaking and you don't know why. It's because like your body has kept that memory intact, even if your brain hasn't, which is like, oh, it's crazy.
Yeah,
it's
I really want to dig into that topic in future podcasts. So.
Yes, we definitely will. But I want to ask one question. How do you think ADHD and trauma has kind of intertwined in your life?
Ooh, wow. Okay, so considering my background, what I've shared with you guys so far, having not been diagnosed at a young age, on top of my living situations and family dynamics, a lot of other things, my history, I feel like the ADHD just exacerbated a lot of what I was experiencing as a kid. And so part of me, looking back, thinks like, you know, oh, what if I was diagnosed and medicated at a young age? Would I have been affected as greatly from the traumatic experiences I've encountered, or would it still have been the same outcome? But either way, I feel like they've exacerbated one another for sure. But also having been diagnosed recently, the ADHD has given a lot of clarity to what I've experienced and why I experienced it the way I did. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Having a diagnosis helps a ton.
Yes, it just helps you put the puzzle pieces together and make sense of the senseless. And receive help, yes. And understand why you are having these experiences. It's just,
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh, I really like what you said. I definitely resonate with that a lot. I'd say for me, I think where I started to realize the trauma was there was all the psychological trauma from this is being treated differently as a kid. And you didn't know it, but you knew you were different, but you didn't know why, but I knew why. But kids don't understand what ADHD is.
The relationships and friendships were sometimes so tense.
It was so hard. And it's I didn't really understand what I had. I just knew my mom called my Adderall my focus pill. She was go take your focus pill. And I was I didn't even know what was going on with my mind. And it was developing with so much. And so by the time when I said I went off my medication, all of the repressed trauma of not being able to make good friends and being bullied, all of that I thought I worked through came back up because I started exasperating certain sorry, I'm losing my voice. I need water. Started exasperating traits that I had masked for so long suddenly came back up in a workplace environment. And I realized my boss at the time was very terrible, and she did not understand what ADHD was, and she would just constantly be there's something wrong with you, you're terrible. And that brought me back to being in 4th grade again. And that trauma, and I was oh shit, I haven't dealt with any of that. And so I was just working through that has been amazing, but it's also been I thought I did the work, but I realized I needed to do a lot more.
That's been coming up for me as well. This is just a final note for me, but even right now, in my life, there's people who, I guess, respond to me and how I behave in a way that almost makes me, it emotionally pains me sometimes. And it just makes me feel a little bit ashamed every once in a while of, I'm behaving this way and I can't help it. That's just how I function. I hate those people. Sometimes, it's just sometimes it rubs them the wrong way because either A, they're not exposed to people who are like that, people who are neurodivergent in that way, or B, they're just very arrogant. It's not even, sometimes it's ignorance, but if I'm explaining to you and it still bothers you, to me that's arrogance in a way. But
to not have the compassion to understand,
just not letting it be and trying to understand it. And you can still have an emotional response to it, sure, but it's what are you going to do after that? Are you going to hear me out and really appreciate and understand who I am as an individual being neurodivergent, or are you just going to assume I'm making it all up or things like that? So
I resonate with that as well. I've learned having friends that understand you have a learning disability is very important. And you don't have to be friends with people that don't get it.
Also finding a social group, other people who are like you. There's so many different communities online as well if you don't have access in your area. I am a part of, even on Facebook, an ADHD community. And so much of it, it's wholesome and nice to know that there's other people like me.
There is, I would say as one last plug, I follow tons of ADHD Instagram accounts because I love seeing people's personal ADHD experiences, especially when they have their PhD. I'm just oh my God.
Yes.
They have a PhD in psychology.
Not just some TikToker posting about ADHD.
It's they actually know, but they share their experiences. And I'm I think it helps to see someone super successful with a learning disability and then seeing yourself and being I'm still very successful just as I am.
Shout out to Dr. Mark Baird at the Whitworth site. Dr. Mark Baird and Dr. Elizabeth Campbell, if you ever get to hear this, they are two of the biggest reasons why I'm even right here right now talking about this. So.
Exactly. No, if it wasn't for Bethy, Anthony and I would have never met. So yeah. And Dr. Baird, he was the one, he taught a trauma class, and that's how we read The Body Keeps the Score. So yes, shout out to Mark and Bethy. We love you guys. Awesome.
Yeah.
But I think that's pretty much it for now. We'll definitely have another one soon. But thank you for tuning in to our Mental Health Awareness Month podcast.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
Okay, toodaloo.